Hello, Richard Greenwood, 1951 to 1960. I'll start at the end. I have a photograph of the 1959 cricket 11. Back row consists of Neil Harrison, David Adamson, Tim Bennett and myself, all of whom went to Emmanuel College, Cambridge. Now, if you want a result out of a very modest beginning, that encapsulates my merchant tailor's story. I'm a scholarship lad from Bootle. I passed the 11 plus from Christchurch, Bootle, that great school on Hawthorne Road. I travelled here and I've got in my pocket still a threepenny bit with a lot of sides. I think it's a 12-sided coin. Threepenny bit was my return bus fare from Merton Road, Bootle, to Merchant Taylor's when I eventually fought my way past the formidable Miss Parker to get into Prep 2. I'd been there for interviewing the previous year, and the killer blow came when she said, "Now then, Richard, what would you like to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a footballer and a cricketer." I suppose everybody said that, but it did not go down well, and I bombed. I went back the following year, and I was going to be an architect, and that seemed to do the trick significantly better. And so my story at Merchant Taylor's began. I'll throw four names into my personal equation: Di Morgan, Granville Jones, Tom York, and the incomparable Jack Fishwick. He taught me physics in the upper sixth. I was so bad at physics. I was pretty bad at choices too, because why on earth I chose physics, at which I was not particularly good, for an A-level, is lost in the mists of time. But there I was in Kai Tunnley's class. Kai Tunnley, an outstanding schoolmaster, but he spoke a language with which I was not familiar. I hadn't got a clue. So I was thrown out of set one with zero achievement in my first year six. Jack Fishwick, however, took up this bedraggled academic specimen and turned me into a B at A-level. He had the knack not of teaching a class full of students, but of teaching me personally. That went for everybody else in the class. He didn't teach, he helped you absorb an immense depth of knowledge. The most impressive thing, though, was always at the end of the lesson, because he kept his little stubs of chalk in a Brillo pad tin, small tin. And wherever he was in the classroom, as the bell rang, he would turn with his piece of chalk and, with deadly aim, it would rattle into his little tin. To, of course, a thunderous round of applause. You can see he had captured my attention. Di Morgan and Granville Jones were two very, very good Welsh rugby players who'd come together as schoolmasters at Merchant Taylor's and begun coaching at first team level in the very early 50s. The holy grail of every schoolboy rugby coach is that unbeaten season. And it eventually came to pass in the 59-60 season, and we went through unbeaten. We didn't go through unbeaten because we were necessarily particularly good, though there were some outstanding individuals in the team. But we had an unbeaten season because we had a cohesion and a spirit and a discipline and an awareness of some very simple tactics. Di was the hard cop, Granville was the nice cop. So Di bullied us into shape and Granville applied the finesse. And with outstanding individual sportsmen, particularly Tony Swift, Nigel Spate, David Jones, Les Sarsfield, and it's invidious to mention names and to leave anybody out, but that team had a triumphant year. And at the same time, Tom York of formidable disposition. You looked at him and you were immediately in awe. The archetypal headmaster sweeping past you in the corridor with a mortarboard. Do you believe it? A mortarboard and gown. As a small boy, I was terror-struck. I didn't need to have been, because his compassion and care and his interest in his students was such that he actually wrote to Emmanuel College, Cambridge, and promoted the interests to the then master, Professor Wellborn, and said, we have at Merchant Taylors a number of young men who would be particularly suited to life at Emmanuel College. Wellborn in due course came to visit, gave me a very, very rigorous interview. He said, I hear you're a cricketer. I said, yes, I very much enjoy my cricket. He said, particularly fine weather, isn't it? Good for cricket. I said, yes, indeed it is, sir. And he moved on to the next guy. Some weeks later, Wellborn wrote to Tom York saying, I much enjoyed my visit to your school and to meeting your young men, and indeed I do think they would fit in very well indeed at Emmanuel College. Wow. And off we went, 5 of us, almost a generation, all to the same college. The answer is, I am here entirely because of my enormous good fortune to have been a scholarship boy from Bootle. It wasn't a bursary, but it was a full-on scholarship that enabled my parents. My father was a headmaster of a secondary modern in Liverpool. My mother taught at Bootle Girls' Grammar School. Modest means sums it up quite perfectly. I was given the advantage of Merchant Taylors. Whether I'd actually earned it or not, I'm not sure. Whether I took it for granted or not, I am sure that I did take it for granted, but I can tell you very strongly and very firmly, I do not, at this stage in my life, take it for granted for one moment. I am, in fact, the beneficiary of my, in inverted commas, bursary, of my Merchant Taylors experience, of my exposure to great men, to great schoolmasters, and to my association and friendship with a number of outstanding individuals in my year group and the surrounding year groups, who, when I was making my way as a young sportsman, both rugby and cricket, I was looked after by older boys in the most remarkably generous way. I learnt their ways. I am a beneficiary, and I am eternally grateful. Thank you, Merchant Taylors. It was a very happy accident that I was enabled to come to Merchant Taylors. My life has been a succession of accidents, not all of them happy, but if I illuminate the fact that I had a rugby career which was founded on teamship, excellence at Merchant Taylors, and went on to encompass Cambridge University, Lancashire, the Barbarians, England, and on one notable occasion I actually played for an Italian 15. And interestingly enough, though very reluctantly at first when I was made captain, I thought, why me? What a nuisance, it gets in the way. I became captain of every single team I played for. And my reputation is as somebody who could help to bring the best out of others. What advice would I give to all the young sportsmen? 1, aim high. Shoot for the stars. And if you land on the moon, it's a pretty damn good destination. Be prepared to make the sacrifices. You don't get given anything in sport. In fact, I'm not really well qualified to speak, am I? Because I'm a dinosaur. I belong to a forgotten generation of amateur rugby players. We were amateur, but we worked very hard indeed not to be amateurish. The modern game is such that margins for error have been reduced totally. Oh, and in any event, I do not want to be reincarnated as a modern rugby player. Good luck to you all, but give it your best shots. I am absolutely thrilled to be able to tell you that I'm the Senior Vice President of the Old Boys Association, and I will become full President for the quarter centenary year in 2020. This I regard as an enormous honour, and if I do nothing else, it is my ambition to promote the well-being of the school, the continued affection and contact of the old boys with the school. I would normally be holding a dinner here at Crosby in the very early part of 2021. That does not please me because the centenary year is 2020. So I will be hoping to persuade my colleagues to anticipate that and have a crescendo event in, say, late November, which will be, first of all, the Old Boys, the Crosby Old Boys dinner, but also it will be the final act of a magnificent centenary, quarter centenary year. There's so much going on, but I very much want to be able to celebrate with many of my friends, but also swathes of other groups. I want to explode the boundaries of the annual dinner and the massive final celebrations for the year 2020, 400 years since the foundation of the school.